Good morning, everybody. Yeah, thank you for joining this class today. We're gonna go into literature today, and we're gonna focus on chapters 8 until 10. You should have read those by yourself, but maybe didn't. We'll go over that and further try to understand what our story is about. Next week, we're gonna dive deeper into the literary techniques and elements. Yeah. Now, as you can see in your WhatsApp group, I've sent you a chat, and that chat is actually to remind you that this week, last Wednesday, we were supposed to have an English language class, but we didn't because of our holiday for Galungan. Bukan Galungan. What is that? Pakruisi, right? Yeah. So that's why we didn't have a lesson. So you individually have to do the post test, yeah? Post test 1 for listening and speaking. Please do that one ASAP, yeah? And submit it. And please do not forget, according to your schedule, this week you have to do the activities in your ebook for listening and speaking, Unit 3, Listening 2. So make sure that you do that as well this week. And don't forget your pre-study, watching the video and doing the activities in your textbook. Yeah. Another thing is for today, for literature, we have a quiz to see. After this quiz, I will not separate them anymore into A, B, C, but I will make them into one. Yeah, so there will be no 3A, 3B, 3C, but just quiz 3. That's 3 weeks from now. Okay, so make sure that you do quiz 2C for literature today, and you do post test 1 for language ASAP. Yeah. Okay, then today we're going to focus on chapters 8 until 10. Remember, last week we digged into literate devices and we looked at what are those. We have here also the Google Slides that you can look into again. So the devices are divided by techniques and elements, whereas the elements are more focusing on what a story consists of. So what are the important components that altogether make up a story, such as the plot, the setting, the rising action, the falling action, theme, mood, atmosphere. We're talking about characterization, the protagonist, the antagonist, all these elements that are important in the story. Then we have the techniques, which are the devices that are used in order to create deeper underlying meaning and or to create effect. And that's for that we use the techniques. Now, it's important that you study this material because there are 2 main focuses. First, you need to be able to recognize them and analyze it, the elements and techniques. And second, you need to be able to use them. Okay, so it's important that you understand this. You individually can go over that, right? And of course, the novel information spark notes, which we will look at today again. And then you also have the video, what about narrative text summaries, what are the components of that, and the narrative arc that we also talked about last week, right? Now, in this class, we already watched the video, right? Yeah? Stephen Allen, did we watch the video already? Do you remember? I think we did.
What video?
The video of Wuthering Heights, the summary.
I forgot. No, I don't remember.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we did actually, but we could start off to as a memory. That is fine. We can do that for those who also weren't present. Okay, so let's watch the video then first, and then after that, we're gonna go into the summary of chapters 5 to 8. Yeah. I think we did already, but it is no problem to just watch it one more time because it's like a summary of what the whole book is about. Yeah. Wait a second, it's still loading.
In the introduction of Wuthering Heights, Mr. Lockwood, a gentleman from the city, rents Thrushcross Grange, an estate in the wild English countryside, and sets out to meet his landlord, Heathcliff, who lives at Wuthering Heights, an estate across the moors. The residents at Wuthering Heights appear to have no respect for social customs. The weather forces Mr. Lockwood to spend the night in a bedroom there, which turns out to be haunted by a ghost named Kathy. During the rising action, Mrs. Dean, a servant at Thrushcross Grange, recalls Heathcliff's life story. Long ago, Heathcliff, a homeless orphan boy, is brought home by Mr. Earnshaw from a trip to Liverpool. Mr. Earnshaw's children, Kathy and Hindley, despise Heathcliff for being a dark-complexioned gypsy with an ugly temperament. Mr. Earnshaw favors Heathcliff, driving Hindley to violence and hatred. Kathy and Heathcliff become inseparable. Hindley is sent to college and returns with a wife. When Mr. Earnshaw dies, Hindley becomes master of Wuthering Heights and turns Heathcliff into a servant, humiliating and abusing him. One night, Kathy and Heathcliff sneak to Thrushcross Grange to spy on the wealthy Linton children, Isabella and Edgar. When a dog bites Kathy, the children are caught. The Lintons take Kathy in, but send Heathcliff home, rejecting him. Kathy returns weeks later, transformed into an upper-class woman. She and Heathcliff become distant, and Kathy accepts Edgar's marriage proposal, though she confesses her love for Heathcliff to Mrs. Dean. Heathcliff runs away, feeling rejected by Kathy, but returns 3 years later, transformed into a wealthy, attractive gentleman. But he's really returned to take revenge for all the wrongs done to him in childhood. Hindley's wife has died, leaving him to raise their child, Hareton. Hindley has cursed God and become an abusive alcoholic. Heathcliff takes control of Wuthering Heights and manipulates Hareton to love him more than his own father. Heathcliff visits Kathy at Thrushcross Grange and they confess love for each other. Isabella falls for Heathcliff, who exploits her to wreak revenge on Edgar. Heathcliff marries Isabella but abuses her. Kathy is driven to madness when Heathcliff is forbidden to visit her because of a fight between him and Edgar. Pregnant with Edgar's child, Kathy dies after she and Heathcliff have one last passionate meeting in which they berate each other for not staying together. But before she dies, Kathy gives birth to a daughter, Catherine. Isabella runs away, then gives birth to a baby she had with Heathcliff, Linton. Edgar raises Catherine alone at Thrushcross Grange. Hindley dies. Heathcliff raises Hareton alone at Wuthering Heights. Eventually, Catherine meets Hareton. Isabella dies. Linton comes to live at Thrushcross Grange, but Heathcliff demands to raise his own son, so Linton ends up at Wuthering Heights. Linton, a sickly, pampered child, is used by Heathcliff to gain control of Thrushcross Grange. Linton and Catherine marry, and Catherine nurses Linton as he dies. Afterward, she and Hareton, whom Catherine has always disliked, become friends. Haunted by Kathy's memory of 18 years, the climax of the novel sees Heathcliff lose his will to live and decline into an early death, failing to deliver the final blow to complete his revenge. During the falling action, Mrs. Dean recalls to Mr. Lockwood how Heathcliff came to die, and Lockwood leaves. But later, Mr. Lockwood returns to visit, and Catherine and Hareton regain their estates, Thrushcross Grange and Wuthering Heights, and fall in love. In the resolution, they plan to marry on New Year's Day.
If you were
Okay. So we already watched this one, so this is kind of the summary again of what happens in the story, yeah, of Wuthering Heights. Now, if we're looking here, we're gonna take a look first at Spark Notes. Yeah, Spark Notes, okay. Let's look at. Basically, when we're looking at the theme of the story, if we're looking at the theme of the story, it refers to destructiveness of a love that never changes. So here you can see themes are the fundamental and often universal ideas explored in the literary work. In every story, there is a theme. A theme needs to be built in. That is something that kind of represents the whole story. You know, it's the idea that is explored within the story. And in this case, the theme of Wuthering Heights is the destructiveness of a love that never changes. It's the love between Catherine and Heathcliff that is very destructive because it basically destructs both lives And the whole book is about their love. Though they do not get married, both people get married to other people, still loving each other, but marrying other people. It's basically a very sick and toxic relationship. That is the first Catherine, which is in love with Heathcliff. And then the second Catherine that appears in the story, she will marry Hareton, and that will then resemble a real love which is not destructive and which ends in peace, and peace between Wuthering Heights and Truscross Grange. So the first Catherine's love, which the whole book is basically about, is very toxic. Yeah. So it's basically about that, because within that love, the reason why Catherine does not marry Heathcliff, because Heathcliff is colored, Heathcliff is low status, Heathcliff comes from a poor background, he is not good enough. And even though she loves him, she chooses to marry someone of status and who has money, yet not loving the man. So in this story, you see a lot of this discrimination, if it's to status or ethnicity, color or education or whatever, that is discriminated as not either not being good enough or being of the right rank. And that is what you can see in this story. A love that is very destructive and just not, that doesn't give any peace. So, and that is what this story is about. Yeah, that's why it portrays throughout the story about the romance. Now, we have done 5 to 7. We are at 8 right now. Let's take a look. Okay, in this sense, if we already, if you remember in 7, so Catherine spends weeks at Truscross Grange with Mrs. and Mr. Linton, who turn her into a lady. And then when she comes back, she looks at Heathcliff disgusted, because Heathcliff is not a gentleman, but looks more like a boy, which is not good taken care of. And the Linton parents do not want Heathcliff close or near to their children, right? Now, in chapter 8, we can see that that was at the beginning of the story, where Frances is the wife of Hindley. So you remember that Hindley went away and he came back with a wife. And that was when his father passed away, Mr. Arnshaw. And so his wife gives birth to a baby, and the boy is called Hareton. But Frances dies not long afterward. So Mr. Hindley has to raise his son Hareton all by himself at Wuthering Heights. And remember, Hindley is Catherine's brother. So he has to raise the child. It's difficult for him. He doesn't know how to do it. He's miserable that his wife died. And so he begins drinking, and he becomes very abusive towards the people around him. Yeah. Heathcliff, on the other hand, and this is where the destruction is, Heathcliff, on the other hand, is happy to see that it doesn't go well with Hindley, because Heathcliff really hates Hindley, because Hindley treated Heathcliff very bad. Remember, he often hid Heathcliff. He was really abused because Hindley is his step brother, right? Now, Catherine starts to spend a lot of time with Edgar Linton, who lives at Truscross Grange, and in the end, they kind of fall in love. Yeah, that's basically what happens. And then Catherine goes to talk to Nellie about it, and she tells Nellie that Edgar asked Catherine to marry, and she said yes. And by the time when Catherine is telling Nellie the story, Heathcliff is kind of listening in and eavesdropping, and he hears everything, and he walks away very angry because they actually love each other. But Catherine chooses to marry Edgar because he is of better status, whereas Heathcliff has no money and no status. Yeah, but she does say that she loves Heathcliff very, very much. Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. So Heathcliff gets very angry and rushes away because he cannot stand hearing what he heard. So on the other side, Hindley, who is still drinking a lot, who is not doing well for himself at one point, takes his son Hareton and he walks and he stumbles and the boy falls over the railing of the staircase. So basically the boy falls down and almost drops to the floor dead, but just in time Heathcliff is there to catch the boy at the bottom of the stairs. Yeah, so here Catherine tells Nellie the whole story, and Heathcliff gets angry because, because of what he heard. And Heathcliff didn't hear Catherine say that she loves him. He only heard that she chooses Edgar. And so he runs away. That night, Catherine tries to look for him, and then she becomes very ill because she stays out for too long. Then the Linton parents bring Catherine to Trustcross Grange to get better, and she gets better, but Mr. and Mrs. Linton become infected because of Catherine, and they die very soon. And then 3 years later, Catherine and Edgar, which is the Linton son, they get married. And then Nellie transfers to Trustcross Grange to take care of Catherine. Yeah, so Hareton, the boy, who is Hindley's son, is with Hindley and Joseph, the servant, at Wuthering Heights. Yeah. And then this is 9. Yeah, let's take a look at 10. So basically, it's all very sad how it goes. Basically, yeah, it's like toxic, yeah, not healthy. Everything goes wrong just because of two people are too selfish. Now, in chapter 10, we can see Lockwood, the man, right, who came to rent Trustcross Grange, and he wants to write about things. He hears the story about what happened in the past between Wuthering Heights and Trustcross Grange. He is sick, right, and he writes in his diary, spends 4 weeks in misery. Heathcliff pays him a visit, and afterward, Lockwood wants Nellie to tell him the story, and so she does. So Nellie said, like, after Heathcliff knew about Catherine getting married with Edgar, Heathcliff ran away for 3 years because he couldn't stand it. And in that period of time, Catherine married Edgar. But then after 3 years, he comes back, and he comes back wealthy. He comes back a gentleman, looking nice, being smart, and having a whole lot of money. Yeah. So it's around 6 months after Catherine's marriage, Heathcliff returns home, and they're all shocked. And after that, Catherine often goes to Wuthering Heights also to see the family. And then it's very obvious that Catherine still really, really cares about Heathcliff both ways, and that makes Edgar very uncomfortable and jealous. So Heathcliff has become this gentleman, physically impressive man, has a lot of money. And he announces that Hindley has invited him to stay, which they found weird because Hindley always hated Heathcliff both ways, hated each other. But why is that? Because Hindley sees that Heathcliff has returned with a lot of money. And Heathcliff didn't work and doesn't have much money anymore. He's becoming bankrupt. So he kind of needs Heathcliff's help to finance the estate. Yeah. So in that sense, there is a bad motivation from Heathcliff. Remember, Heathcliff only came back to take revenge on everybody because he was hurt by Hindley, how he treated him and made him into a servant, and then hurt by Catherine because Catherine didn't marry him but married Edgar. So he really comes back for revenge. Yeah. Now, Catherine and Isabella, remember, Isabella is Edgar's little sister. That is the Linton's daughter. They visit Wuthering Heights a lot. And once they visit a lot, Isabella begins to fall in love with Heathcliff. Even though Isabella knows that Heathcliff still loves Catherine, she still wants to be with him. Yeah, so that's how it kind of continues in the story. So we're at the point now where Catherine is married to Edgar, and her brother Hindley lost his wife and raises his son by himself. And Heathcliff went away for 3 years, come back handsome and rich. That's kind of where we are right now in the story. Okay, now let's look at the PDF and let's start reading. So we are at chapter 8. Teresia, can you start reading?
Yes, Miss. Chapter 8.
Yeah, wait, I'm trying to make it bigger. Yeah.
Miss, okay. An unhappy Christmas. The next day, Heathcliff rose early and took his bad temper onto the moors, not reappearing until the family had left for church. By this time, he seems to be in a better state of mind. He stood near me for a time, and then finding his courage said, Nelly, make me tidy. I'm going to be good. I'm
Yeah.
going to be.
Okay, continue one more.
It's time that you will behave, I said. You have hurt Catherine's feelings. You are too proud. If you are ashamed, you must ask pardon. And though I have dinner to get ready, I'll make time to arrange you so that Edgar Linton shall look like a baby beside you. You are younger, but you are taller and twice as broad across the shoulders. You could knock him down in a second.
Thank you. Okay, we continue with Stephen Allen, Heathcliff's face.
Heathcliff's face brightened for a moment, then it darkened again. But Nelly, it wouldn't make him less good looking. I wish I had light hair and a fair skin, and was as well dressed as rich as he, and cried for his mother, and sat at home all day if there is a little rain. I added, "Oh, Heathcliff, you are showing a poor spirit. Now look in the glass and tell me if you don't find yourself rather good looking too. Now you've washed and come and have finished with your bad temper. For all we know, your father was a king in some faraway country. For all we know, and your mother a queen, and you were seized as a child by wicked sailors and brought to England." So I continued to talk, and Heathcliff was beginning to look quite pleasant, when suddenly our conversation was interrupted by the sound of wheels moving up the road and entering the yard. From the window, we saw the two Lintons, covered with furs, climbing down from their horses. Catherine took each of the children by the hand and brought them into the house.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we go to Talia. Talia, can you continue? I urged. Talia? Guys, turn on your cameras, please. Fiona? Fiona, can you continue reading? Fiona?
Okay, miss. Okay, miss.
Okay.
So
I
I can
urged.
see. Okay. Oh, I urge my companion to go and show his good temper. But unfortunately for him, when he opened the door leading from the kitchen on one side, Henley opened it on the other. They met, and the master, annoyed at seeing him clean and cheerful, or perhaps remembering Mr. Linton's word, pushed him back sharply and ordered Joseph to send him upstairs until dinner was over. Away, you gypsy, he cried. What are you trying to make
Right.
yourself to look like your superiors? Wait till I get hold of that fine hair. See if I won't pull it a little longer. It's long enough already, remarked Edgar Linton from the doorway. It's like horsehair.
Yeah.
Headcliff. Udah.
What does this mean? Like horsehair. What is happening? What is like horsehair? What is it referring to?
Heathcliff's hair.
Yeah, very good. Heathcliff's hair. Heathcliff's hair is like horsehair. Who can tell me what figurative language this is? What technique is used here? A comparison between two things using like or as. What is that?
Metaphor.
Almost good. Not a metaphor, the other one. Starts with an S. Simile.
Simile?
Yeah, very good. Simile. Simile is very similar to metaphor, but a simile, the comparison is more upfront. It uses the words like and as. So it's a very clear comparison. This is compared to that, like in this case, Heathcliff's hair is compared with a horse's hair. But if we're using a metaphor, we're also comparing, but it's a more subtle comparison. And it doesn't use like or as like that. Good. Okay, William, can you continue reading?
Heathcliff's violent nature was not prepared to accept this insult. He seized a dish of hot apple pie and threw it right in the speaker's face. Edgar began to cry and Isabella and Catherine hurried in. Mr. Hindley dragged Heathcliff outside, while I got a kitchen cloth and rather unkindly rubbed Edgar's nose and mouth clean. Kathy stood by, confused and turning red with embarrassment. "You shouldn't have spoken to him," she said to Edgar. "Now he'll be beaten and I hate that. I can't eat my dinner." "I didn't speak to him," wept the youth. "I promised my mother I wouldn't say a word to him." "Well, don't cry," said Catherine scornfully. "You're not dead. You're not dead. My brother is coming. Be quiet." At the sight of all the food on the table, the little visitors recovered their their good spirits. They were hungry after their journey, and no real harm has been done. I waited at the table behind the mistress's chair. Kathy filled a mouthful and then and then sit, sat, set it down again. Her cheeks were hot and the tears poured over them. She quickly dropped her fork and bent beneath the tablecloth to hide her feelings. She was unhappy all day.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
Okay, who can tell me why was Kathy unhappy? Why was she sad? Why is she sad? Who can tell me that? No one? Come on, why is she sad? Aaron? Aaron, tell me, why is Kathy sad?
Why is who?
Catherine sad. Why is she sad? Why is Katie sad? Kan sedih. Huh?
Heathcliff,
What about it? What do you mean? That's only a word. Can you explain?
because Heathcliff is tortured by Hindley.
Yeah, very good. And she feels sad. Yeah, she doesn't like that. Good. Thank you. Okay, Aaron, can you continue reading from In the Evening?
Okay. In the evening, we had a dance. Katy begged that Heathcliff, who had been locked up by the master, might be freed, as Isabella had nobody to dance with. But Mr. Hindley would not listen, and I had to fill the place. Our pleasure in the exercise was increased by the arrival of a band of 15 musicians and some singers too. Young Miss Earnshaw loved the music, so they gave us plenty. Catherine loved it too, but she said it sounded sweetest at the top of the stairs, and she went up in the dark. I followed. They shut the door below. never noticing our absence. She did not stop at the head of the stairs, but went on up the ladder to the top of the house, where Heathcliff was locked in, and spoke to him through the door.
Yeah, very good. So Hindley locked him up, and Kathy feels bad about that. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, Christian, can you continue? Christian? Talia? Talia? Okay, Ketut? Hello, Ketut? Ketut? Everybody who has his camera off and does not respond especially, but also off, is counted as absent. Remember that. Jonathan? Vincent? Vincent?
Yes, miss.
Hi, can you turn on your camera, Vincent?
My webcam is broken, miss.
Oh, yeah, okay. Can you continue reading?
Where?
When the singers had finished.
When the singers had finished, I went to warn her. Instead of finding her outside, I heard her voice from inside. The naughty little thing had crept out through one small window in the roof, and along the outside and in through the window of Heathcliff's prison. And it was with the greatest difficulty that I could persuade her to come out again. When she did come, Heathcliff came with her.
Yeah, thank you. Continue one more.
I told them that I didn't mean to encourage their tricks, but as Heathcliff had not eaten at all since yesterday's dinner, I would shut my eyes for once to his deceiving Mr. Hindley. He went down, and I set him in a chair by the fire in the kitchen.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. Amy? Amy? Okay, David? David?
Yeah, miss.
Can you continue reading? Can you turn on your camera? Can you turn on your camera, David? Hello? David? Okay. Kevin? Hi, Kevin. Alan? 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 Andika?
Yes, miss.
Andika?
Yes, miss.
Can you please turn on your camera? Alan juga?
Miss.
Kan udah tahu harus dinyalakan. Kenapa tidak dinyalakan? Okay. Alan, can you continue reading? Alan? Okay, Alan absent, ya. Andika, can you continue reading?
Okay, miss.
Please
Yep.
continue.
Yeah, yes. Okay. He was sick and could eat little, he said, with his head in his hand. We inquired what he was thinking about. And is right. I am trying to decide how I shall take me ripping on heavily. I do not care how long I wait, if only I can do it into
Yes? From here to here. From I told him, I told them until end.
Oh yes.
Okay. Nah ini, he was sick. He was sick.
He was sick and could eat later. He sat with his head in his hand. But incorrect. What he was thinking about. He answered, trying to decide how I shall take my ribbon on hidingly. I do not care how long I wait, if only I can do it in the end.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to the last one of the second chapter, which is No Company at All. On the morning of a bright day in the following June 1778, Hareton, the last of the ancient family of Earnshaw, was born. He was a fine boy, the doctor said, though, that his mother had had a sickness of the lungs for many months and would not live long. Mr. Hindley refused to believe it, but one night, while she was leaning on his shoulder, a fit of coughing seized her. He raised her in his arms. She put her arm around his neck. Her face changed, and she was dead. The child, Hareton, was left completely in my charge. His father, so long as he saw him healthy and never heard him cry, was happy. He had room in his heart for only his wife and himself, and he could not bear the loss. He neither wept nor prayed. He cursed God and man and gave himself up to wild living. The servants all left. Joseph and I were the only two who would stay. And Kathy's teachers stopped visiting us, and nobody respectable came near us except Edgar Linton, who came to see Kathy. Okay, there are two questions. The first one: what does this say about Mr. Hindley's behavior? What does this say about Mr. Hindley's behavior, Mita? Could you answer that? So nobody wants to come to Wuthering Heights anymore. The teacher just stops coming. All the servants, they quit and go away. What does it say about Mr. Hindley's behavior?
Maybe his mental health is sick
Because
of the his wife death.
Yeah, because his wife passed away, right? Very good. So then it's sure to say that his whole attitude and his behavior is very bad. Yeah, he starts drinking, he becomes violent. It says here he had room in his heart for only his wife and himself, and he could not bear the loss. What does this mean, William? He had room in his heart for only his wife and himself. What does that mean? Could you answer that, William?
What? Excuse me?
He had room in his heart for only his wife and himself. What does that mean?
That means he wouldn't cheat on his wife.
Yeah, one thing for sure, he's loyal, but
Yeah.
what does that mean with reference to his child?
Oh, he doesn't love his child as much as like that.
Yeah,
Kind of like that.
Yeah, kind of like that. That his love is first and foremost for his wife.
Yeah.
And he could not bear the loss, not for his child. So in this sense that he loses his wife, he doesn't want to deal with his kids.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to see his child. As long as he doesn't cry, he's fat and he lives, he's fine. So he is not a father to his child, basically. He's not acting as a responsible parent. Yeah? He's basically wasting his life getting drunk, spending money, and feeling sorry for himself that he lost his wife, but not thinking about his son. Okay, now here comes the question. Angeline, I want to ask you, in what point of view is this story written? First point of view or third? Do you remember what the difference is?
Yes. Third,
Okay.
he, she, first use I.
Very good. It's in the first person point of view. Who is telling the story then, Angeline?
It's Nelly, the servant.
Very good. And because Nelly the servant is one of the characters in the story, we can it is definitely the first POV. Yeah, very good, Angeline. Awesome. Angeline, could you read? We are, oops, I think I went too far. Where the heck? Yeah. Right. Here at 15.
At 15, she was the queen of our part of the country, a proud, strong-willed girl, but completely dependable and loyal. Heathcliff still had his place in her heart, and Linton, with all his superiority, found it difficult to awaken equally strong feelings. Catherine did not show her rough side in the Lintons' company, but had the good sense to be ashamed of being rude where she was received with such unfailing good manners. The old lady and gentleman were deceived by her pretty ways and became fond of her, and she gained the admiration of Isabella and the heart and soul of her brother.
Yeah, thank you. Joseph, Justin, can you do this paragraph?
One afternoon, Mr. Hindley had gone out, so Heathcliff had given himself a holiday. He had reached about the age of 16 and had by that time lost the advantage of his early education. His childhood sense of superiority, developed by the love that old Mr. Earnshaw felt for him, had disappeared. He had struggled for a long time to keep up with Catherine in her studies but had given up. Then his appearance began to show his state of mind. His walk lacked confidence, he looked unpleasant and rarely spoke, and he took pleasure in stirring up the dislike of those whom he met.
Yeah, Nessa, thank you. Nessa, can you continue?
Yeah, miss?
Please continue reading.
From the Catherine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Catherine and he were still loyal companions when his work was done, and on this occasion he came into the house in search of her. I was helping her to arrange her dress, as she thought she had the whole place to herself and had let Edgar Linton know of her brother's absence. "Why have you got that silk dress on?" asked Heathcliff. "Nobody is coming here, I hope." "Not that I know of," replied Catherine rather awkwardly, "but you should be in the field now, Heathcliff. Headley doesn't often free us of his presence," he remarked the boys. I'll not work anymore today. I'll stay with you." He moved toward the fire. Catherine looked at him uncertainly. Isabella, and Edgar Linton talked of calling this afternoon," she said after a short silence. "As it's raining, I don't care. I don't really expect them, but they may come."
Okay, thank you. Okay, for those who have already read it, okay, for the ones who haven't, you would have to read it along until chapter 10, yeah? Yeah, Kathy's voice. Because next week we will be continuing with chapter 11, okay? So it goes until the end, yeah? Heathcliff goes away, and Catherine eventually marries Edgar. Okay, it's a little bit messed up in the story. Okay, next week we're gonna try to work more with the literary elements and with the techniques. Okay. Are there any questions so far regarding the story, guys? No? Remember that you have to see the story in the light of that time. It was a very different time, a very different culture. Women weren't supposed to be educated. Women weren't supposed to work. They were only good enough to raise children. So only the men could be successful. Also, a very different way of living, very different fashion. Culture was different. The economy was different. Very different settings. So basically, for a story like this to be written in that time was very wow. Therefore, Emily Bronte and her sisters, when they wanted to publish their work, they had to use male names, otherwise they wouldn't even be able to publish their work. Something, eh? Can you imagine, Steffi, you write a book and you have to, you can only publish it with a guy's name because you would not be accepted. So you publish a book and it becomes something and nobody knows it's from you. How would you feel? Steffi, how would you feel if you would have to portray to be someone else?
Not good.
Yeah.
Because like I made it, but my name is not on it.
Right. It's hard, right? Yeah.
It feels unfair. Yes.
Very much. Yeah, exactly. Now, so if you're looking at the story of Catherine and Heathcliff, you can say they're stupid, but basically these are two people who really love each other, but somehow cannot be together. It's a little bit similar to like Romeo and Juliet, but then Romeo and Juliet forced to be together, whereas these two people purposefully marry other people just for the sake of status and money, you know, and it ruins them. They end up being very, very, very lonely, you know, and unhappy. Stories. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. I appreciate you trying to understand. Some of you are maybe still confused. Let's take this semester just to get used to everything. Next semester, you guys will be doing another novel and poetry. Okay, remember, do quiz 2C. Don't forget to do pulse test 1, right, for language. And I will see you again next week. Have a great weekend. God bless you. And till next week then. Bye, guys.